All righty. Well, welcome back to the Science of Getting Rich. Let's dive right into it. My name is Vanessa Black. If you are just joining us here, welcome. You have definitely came at a great time where we are diving into the book Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. And my name is Vanessa Black. I'm one of the founders and owners of Billionaire, where our vision and mission is to impact the lives of 4 billion souls to achieve personal and financial freedom through the development of their mind, body, and soul. And there's no greater book that encompasses that vision and mission than The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. So we have left off in the last episode. If you did not watch it, there is going to be a playlist that you can go ahead and check on The Science of Getting Rich. We dove in the right to be rich. It is your right to be rich. Okay, it is abnormal to not want more, to not want to become rich and not to attain riches. It is abnormal, and you have the right to be rich because it's in the use of things that we can fully develop our mind, our body, and our soul, and all equally, mind, body, and soul. Those are things that we should develop, give our attention to developing, not just our mind and not develop our body and our souls, but all three. So we went into the right to be rich, and then chapter 2, there is a science of getting rich. And now we're going to start with chapter 3, which is called, Is Opportunity Monopolized? Is opportunity monopolized? All righty. Cheers to you, Billionaire. Yes, this is water in a wine glass, because that's how water should be drank. All right. No one is kept poor because other people have monopolized the wealth and have put a fence around it. You may be shut off from engaging in business in certain lines, but there are other channels open to you. At different periods, the tide of opportunity sets in different directions, according to the needs of the whole in the particular stage of social evolution, which has been reached. There is abundance of opportunity for the person who will go with the tide instead of trying to swim against it. Abundance of opportunity for the person who will go with the tide instead of trying to swim against it. So workers, either as individuals or as a class, are not deprived of opportunity. The workers are not being kept down by their masters. They are not being ground by the trust and big business. As a class, they are where they are because they do not do things in a certain way. The working class may become the master class whenever they will begin to do things in a certain way. The law of wealth is the same for them as it is for all others. This they must learn, and they will remain where they are as long as they continue to do as they do. The individual worker, however, is not held down by an entire class's ignorance of these laws. He can follow the tide of opportunity to riches, and this book will tell him how. Go ahead and share this with 10 people that you know, 10 people that you love. Go ahead and share this. No one is kept in poverty by a shortness in the supply of riches. There is more than enough for all. A palace as large as the Capitol at Washington might be built for every family on earth. From the building material in the United States alone, and under intensive cultivation, this country would produce wool, cotton, linen, and silk enough to clothe each person in the world, finer than Solomon was arrayed in all his glory, together with food enough to feed them all, and luxuriously. The visible supply is practically inexhaustible, and the invisible supply really is inexhaustible. Everything you see on earth is made from one original substance, out of which all things proceed. New forms are constantly being made, and older ones are dissolving, but all are shapes assumed by one thing. Just like this water turns into another form, ice cubes. One substance. There is no limit to the supply of formless stuff or original substance. So he's calling it the same word. You can call it formless stuff. You can call it original substance. You can call it God. You could call it spirit. The universe is made out of it, but it was not all used in making the universe. The spaces in, through and between the forms of the visible universe are permeated and filled with the original substance. With the formless stuff, with the raw material of all things, 10,000 times as much has been made, might still be made. And even then, we should not have exhausted the supply of universal raw material. No one, therefore, is poor because nature is poor, or because there is not enough to go around. Nature is an inexhaustible storehouse of riches. The supply will never run short. Original substance is alive with creative energy and is constantly producing more forms. When the supply of building material is exhausted, more will be produced. When the soil is exhausted so that foodstuffs and materials for clothing will no longer grow upon it, it will be renewed and more soil will be made. When all the gold and silver has been dug from the earth, if humanity is still in such a stage of social development that it needs gold and silver, more will produce from the formless. The formless stuff responds to the needs of mankind. It will not let the world be without any good thing. The formless stuff responds to the needs of mankind, and it will not let the world be without any good thing. This is true of humanity collectively. The race as a whole is always abundantly rich. And if individuals are poor, it is because they do not follow the certain way of doing things, which makes the individual rich. If individuals are poor, it is because they do not follow the certain way of doing things, which makes the individual rich. The formless stuff is intelligent. It is stuff which thinks. It is alive and is always impelled towards more life. It is natural and inherent impulse of life to seek to live more. It is the nature of intelligence to enlarge itself and of consciousness to seek to extend its boundaries and find fuller expression. The universe of forms have been made by formless living substance, throwing itself into form in order to express itself more fully. The universe is a great living presence, always moving inherently toward more life and fuller functioning. Nature is formed for the advancement of life, and its impelling motive is the increase of life. That's nature's impelling motive is the increase of life. Because of this, everything which can possibly minister to life is bountiful provided. There can be no lack unless God is to contradict himself and nullify his own works. There can be no lack. That is not the truth. Unless God is to contradict himself and nullify his own works. You are not kept poor by lack in the supply of riches. It is a fact which I shall demonstrate a little further on, that even the resources of the formless supply are at the command of man or woman who will act and think in a certain way. At the command, the formless supply, I mean, it's formless. It's not yet formed. But they're at the command, the resources of the formless supply are at the command of you who will act and think in a certain way. Chapter 4. The first principle in the science of getting rich. Thought is the only power which can produce tangible riches from the formless substance. Thought is the only power which can produce tangible riches from the formless substance. This was formless before. Thought created this. Just like the chair I'm sitting on. maybe the couch you're sitting on, the chair you're sitting on. It was formless at one point. But thought was the power which produced it into a tangible thing from the formless. The stuff from which all things are made is a substance which thinks, and a thought of form in this substance produces the form. Original substance moves according to its thoughts. Original substance moves according to its thoughts. Every form and process you see in nature is the visible expression of a thought in original substance. As the formless stuff thinks of a form, it takes that form. As it thinks of a motion, it makes that motion. That is the way all things were created. All things were created. We live in a thought world, which is part of a thought universe. The thought of a moving universe extended throughout formless substance, and the thinking stuff moving according to that thought took the form of systems of planets and maintains that form. Thinking substance takes the form of its thought and moves accordingly to the thought. Holding the idea of circling system of suns and worlds, it takes the form of these bodies and moves them as it thinks. Thinking the form of a slow-growing oak tree, it moves accordingly and produces a tree. Though centuries may be required to do the work, in creating, the formless seems to move according to the lines of motion it has established. In other words, the thought of an oak tree does not cause the instant formation of a full-grown tree, but it does start in motion the forces which will produce the tree along established lines of growth. When you think of an idea, when you have a vision, it doesn't show up tomorrow in the physical, okay? But it begins the process. It does start in motion the forces which will produce that vision into tangible, into a reality, into a form. But as long as you hold that vision and additional other things, every thought of form held in thinking substance causes the creation of the form. That's the power that you have. That's the thinking power that you and I have. Every thought of form held, that means you hold it in thinking substance. You're thinking about it. That's what vision boards do for you. Goal cards do for you. Imagination, okay? Thinking of it. But held in thinking substance causes the creation of the form, but always, or at least generally, along lines of growth and action already established. The thought of a house of a certain construction, if it were impressed upon formless substance, might not cause the instant formation of the house, but it would cause a turning of creative energies already working in trade and commerce into such channels as to result in the speedy building of the house. And if there was no existing channels through which the creative energy could work, then the house would be formed directly from primal substance without waiting for the slow processes of the organic and inorganic world. No thought of form can be impressed upon original substance without causing the creation of the form. That is the power of your thoughts. That is the power of my thoughts. That is the power of our thoughts. No thought of form can be impressed upon original substance without causing the creation of that form. Powerful. A person is a thinking center and can originate thought. All the forms that a person fashions with his hands must first exist in his thought. He cannot shape a thing unless he has thought that thing. So far, humankind has confined its efforts wholly to the work of its hands, applying manual labor to the world of forms and seeking to change or modify those already existing. Humankind has never thought of trying to cause the creation of new forms by impressing thought upon formless substance. When a person has a thought form, he takes material from the forms of nature and makes an image of the form which is in his mind. People have so far made little or no effort to cooperate with formless intelligence, to work with the Father in quotation marks. You're working with God, you're working with Spirit, you're working with the Father. The individual has not dreamed that he can do what he seeth the Father doing. An individual reshapes and modifies existing forms by manual labor and has given no attention to the question of whether he may produce things from formless substance by communicating his thoughts to it. We propose to prove that he may do so, to prove that any man or woman may do so, and to show how. As our first step, we must lay down 3 fundamental propositions. You ready? This is some good stuff. If you agree with me, let me know in the comments. First, we assert that there is one original formless stuff or substance from which all things are made. All the seemingly many elements are but different presentations of one element. All the many forms found in organic and inorganic nature are but different shapes made from the same stuff. And this is thinking stuff. A thought held in it produces the form of the thought. Thought in thinking substance produces shapes. A human being is a thinking center. You are a thinking center. Repeat after me. I am a thinking center, capable of original thought. If a person can communicate his thought to original thinking substance, he can cause the creation or formation of the thing that he or she thinks about. Let's summarize this. To summarize this, there is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. A thought in this substance produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. A person can form things in his thought, and by impressing his thought upon formless substance, can cause the thing he thinks about to be created. Okay, you might want to rewind that. You might have to listen to it over and over and over again. If you didn't quite catch it yet, don't worry. You're going to get it. You're going to understand it. And if you did, you felt that, the power of that. It may be asked if I can prove these statements, and without going into details, I answer that I can do so, both by logic and experience. Reasoning back from the phenomena of form and thought, I come to one original thinking substance. And reasoning forward from this thinking substance, I come to a person's power to cause a formation of the thing he thinks about. And by experiment, I find the reasoning true. This is my strongest proof. If one person who reads this book gets rich by doing what it tells him to do, that is evidence in support of my claim. But if every person who does what it tells him to do gets rich, that is positive proof until someone goes through the process and fails. The theory is true until the process fails. And this process will not fail, for everyone who does exactly what this book tells him to do will get rich, period. I have said that people get rich by doing things in a certain way, and to do so, people must become able to think in a certain way. That this is powerful right here. People get rich by doing things in a certain way. And to do things in a certain way, people must become able to think in a certain way. A person's way of doing things is the direct result of the way he thinks about things. Person's way of doing things, your way of doing things is a direct result of the way that you think about things. Your way of doing things is a direct result of the way you think about those things. To do things in the way you want to do them, you will have to acquire the ability to think the way you want to think. This is the first step towards getting rich. So if you're taking notes, I need a first step. My first step, okay? I need to be able to think what I want to think. Think the way that I want to think. That's the first step towards getting rich. To think the way you want to think. And to think what you want to think is to think truth. Regardless of appearances. Yes. Every individual has a natural and inherent power to think what he wants to think. But it requires far more effort to do so than it does to think the thoughts which are suggested by appearances. To think according to appearance is easy, okay? To think according to appearance, go to your phone, check your bank account. Okay, I'm looking at it. I see it. That's easy. I can think according to that. But to disregard appearances and to think truth of what my bank account really is, that's one of the most toughest, challenging things to do. But that's what he's saying to do, okay? To think according to appearance is easy. It's easy. Everybody thinks according to appearances. That's easy. You get the doctor's note, okay? You look at this glass. It's not wine. You see water. It's easy to know and think this is water. To think truth. Now, this is the most important thing right here. To think truth, regardless of appearances, is laborious and requires an expenditure of more power than any other work we are called upon to perform. To think truth, I'm going to repeat that again. To think truth, regardless of appearances, is laborious and requires the expenditure of more power than any other work we are called upon to perform. There is no labor form which most people shrink as they do from that of sustained and consecutive thought. It is the hardest work in the world. This is especially true when truth is contrary to appearances. There is no labor from which most people shrink as they do from that of sustained and consecutive thought. It's the hardest work in the world, sustained and consecutive thought. This is especially true when truth is contrary to appearances. So the truth is I see 20 million in my bank account, not what it's appearing to look like. The truth is that you have perfect health, not what the doctor could have mentioned to grandma, your aunt, your uncle, your parents, your kids. That's not the truth. But the hardest work in the world is to see the truth, think the truth, when it's contrary to what the appearance looks like. Every appearance in the visible world tends to produce a corresponding form in the mind, which observes it. And this can only be prevented by holding the thought of the truth. To look upon the appearances of poverty will produce corresponding forms in your own mind, unless you hold to the truth that there is no poverty, there is only abundance. There is no poverty. That's the truth. There is no poverty. There's only abundance. To think health when surrounded by the appearances of disease, or to think riches when in the midst of the appearance of poverty, requires power. But whoever acquires this power becomes a mastermind. That person can conquer fate and can have what he or she wants. Can I get an amen? Hallelujah. This power can only be acquired by getting hold of the basic fact, which is behind all appearances. And that fact is that there is one thinking substance from which and by which all things are made. Then we must grasp the truth that every thought held in this substance becomes a form. Every thought held in this substance becomes a form. And that man can so impress his thought upon it as to cause them to take form and become visible things. What are you constantly thinking of? Are you constantly thinking about wealth, talking about wealth, only wealth, because that is the truth? When we realize this, we lose all doubt and fear, for we know that we can create what we want to create. We can get what we want to have and can become what we want to be. As a first step toward getting rich, you must believe the 3 fundamental statements given previously in this chapter. And to emphasize them, I repeat them here. There is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. A thought in this substance produces a thing that is imaged by the thought. A person can form things in his thought, and by impressing his thought upon formless substance, can cause the thing he thinks about to be created. You must lay aside all other concepts of the universe, and you must dwell upon this until it is fixed in your mind and has become your habitual thought. Read these statements over and over and over again. Fix every word upon your memory and meditate upon them until you firmly believe what they say. If a doubt comes to you, cast it aside. Do not listen to arguments against this idea. Do not listen to arguments against this idea. Do not go to churches or lectures where a contrary concept of things is taught or preached. Do not read magazines or books which teach a different idea. If you get mixed up in your understanding, belief, and faith, all your efforts will be in vain. If you get mixed up in your understanding, your belief, and faith, all your efforts will be in vain. Do not ask why these things are true, nor speculate as to how they can be true. Simply take them on trust. The science of getting rich begins with the absolute acceptance of this. Chapter 5, Increasing Life. You must get rid of the last vestige of the old idea that there is a deity whose will it is that you should be poor, or whose purposes may be served by keeping you in poverty. The intelligent substance, which is all, and which lives in all and lives in you, is a consciously living substance. Being a consciously living substance, it must have the nature and inherent desire of every living intelligence for increase of life. Every living thing must continually seek for the enlargement of its life, because life, in the mere act of living, must increase itself. A seed dropped into the ground springs into activity, and in the act of living produces 100 more seeds. Life, by living, multiplies itself. It is forever becoming more. It must do so if it continues to be at all. Intelligence is under the same necessity for continuous increase. Every thought we think makes it necessary for us to think another thought. Consciousness is continually expanding. Every fact we learn leads us to the learning of another fact. Knowledge is continually increasing. Every talent we cultivate brings to the mind the desire to cultivate another talent. We are subject to the urge of life, seeking expression, which ever drives us on to know more, to do more, and to be more. In order to know more, do more, and be more, we must have more. We must have things to use, for we learn and do and become only by using things. We must get rich so that we can live more. The desire for riches is simply the capacity for larger life-seeking fulfillment. The desire for riches, simply the capacity for larger life-seeking fulfillment. The reason why you have that desire for riches is simply the capacity for larger life that is seeking fulfillment out of you. Every desire is an effort of an unexpressed possibility to come into action. It is power seeking to manifest, which causes desire. That which makes you want more money is the same as that which makes the plant grow. It is life seeking fuller expression. The one living substance must be subject to this inherent law of all life. It is permeated with the desire to live more, and that is why it is under the necessity of creating things. The one substance desires to live more in and throughout and through you. Therefore, it wants you to have all the things you can use. It is the desire of God that you should get rich. He wants you to get rich because he can express himself better through you if you have plenty of things to use in giving him expression. He can live more in you if you have unlimited command of the means of life. The universe desires you to have everything you want to have. Nature is friendly to your plans. Everything is naturally for you. Make up your mind that this is true. It is essential, however, that your purpose should harmonize with the purpose that's in all. You must want real life, not mere pleasure or sensual gratification. Life is a performance of function, and the individual really lives only when he performs every function, physical, mental, and spiritual, of which he is capable, without excess in any. You do not want to get rich in order to live swindlishly for the gratification of animal desires. That is not life. But the performance of every physical function is a part of life. And no one lives completely who denies the impulses of the body and normal and healthful expression. You do not want to get rich solely to enjoy mental pleasures, to get knowledge, to gratify ambition, to outshine others, to be famous. All these are a legitimate part of life. But the person who lives for the pleasures of the intellect alone will only have a partial life, and he will never be satisfied with his lot. You do not want to get rich solely for the good of others, to lose yourself for the salvation of mankind, to experience the joys of philanthropy and sacrifice. The joys of the soul are only a part of life, and they are no better or nobler than any other part. You want to get rich in order that you may eat, drink, and be merry when it is time to do these things, in order that you may surround yourself with beautiful things, see distant lands, feed your mind, and develop your intellect, in order that you may love others and do kind things, and be able to play a good part in helping the world to find truth. But remember that extreme altruism is no better and no nobler than extreme selfishness. Both are mistakes. Get rid of the idea that God wants you to sacrifice yourself for others and that you can secure his favor by doing so. God requires nothing of the kind. What God wants is that you should make the most of yourself, for yourself and for others. And you can help others more by making the most of yourself than in any other way. You can make the most of yourself only by getting rich. So it is right and praiseworthy that you should give your first and best thought to the work of acquiring wealth. I'm going to repeat that paragraph. What God wants is that you should make the most of yourself, for yourself and for others. And you can help others more by making the most of yourself than in any other way. You can make the most of yourself only by getting rich. So it is right and praiseworthy that you should give your first and best thought to the work of acquiring wealth. I praise you for understanding that riches are important, that you deserve riches, that it's necessary, it's normal, okay, for you to acquire wealth. Remember, however, that the desire of substance is for all, and its movements must be for more life to all. It cannot be made to work for less life to any, because it is equally in all, seeking riches and life. Intelligent substance will make things for you, but it will not take things away from someone else and give them to you. You must get rid of the thought of competition. You are to create, not to compete for what is already created. You do not have to take anything away from anyone. You do not have to drive sharp bargains. You do not have to cheat or to take advantage. You do not need to let anyone work for you for less than he earns. You do not have to covet the property of others or to look at it with wishful eyes. No one has anything of which you cannot have the like, and that without taking what he has away from him. You are to become a creator, not a competitor. You are going to get what you want, but in such a way that when you get it, every other person whom you affect will have more than he has now. Love that. You are going to get what you want. That's not the question. But you're going to get it in such a way that when you get it, every other person whom you affect will have more than he or she has now. I'm aware that there are those who get a vast amount of money by proceeding in direct opposition to the statements in the paragraph above. And may add a word of explanation here. Individuals of that type who become very rich do so sometimes purely by their extraordinary ability on the plane of competition. And sometimes they unconsciously relate themselves to the substance and its great purposes and movements for the general upbuilding through industrial evolution. Rockefeller, Carnegie, Morgan have been the unconscious agents of the Supreme in the necessary work of systematizing and organizing productive industry, and in the end, their work will contribute immensely toward increased life for all. But their day is nearly over. They have organized production and will soon be succeeded by the agents of the multitude who will organize the machinery of distribution. They're like the monster reptiles of the prehistoric eras. They play a necessary part in the evolutionary process, but the same power which produced them will dispose of them. And it is well to bear in mind that they have never been really rich. A record of the private lives of most of this class will show that they have really been most abject and wretched. Riches secured on the competitive plane are never satisfactory and permanent. They are yours today and another's tomorrow. Remember, if you are to become rich in a scientific and certain way, you must rise entirely out of the competitive thought. You must never think for a moment that the supply is limited. Just as soon as you begin to think that all the money is being cornered and controlled by others, and that you must exert yourself to get laws passed and to stop this process and so on, in that moment you drop into the competitive mind and your power to cause creation is gone for the time being. And what is worse, you will probably arrest the creative movements you have already begun. Know, capital K-N-O-W, that there are countless millions of dollars worth of gold in the mountains of the earth, not yet brought to light. And know that if there were not, more would be created from thinking substance to supply your needs. Know, capital K-N-O-W, that the money you need will come, even if it is necessary for 1,000 men to be led to the discovery of new gold mines tomorrow. Never look at the visible supply. Look always at the limitless riches in formless substance. And know that they are coming to you as fast as you can receive and use them. As fast as you can receive and use them. Nobody, by concerning the visible supply, can prevent you from getting what is yours. Nobody can prevent you from getting what is yours. That is so incredible. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that free? I know this is talking about riches, but it is a personal freedom book as well. So never allow yourself to think for an instant that all the best building spots will be taken before you get ready to build your house, unless you hurry. Never worry about the trust and the combines and get anxious for the fear that they will soon come to own the whole earth. Never get afraid that you will lose what you want because some other person beats you to it. That cannot possibly happen. You are not seeking anything that is possessed by anybody else. You are causing what you want to be created from formless substance, and the supply is without limits. Stick to the formulated statement. There is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which in its original state permeates, penetrates, and fills the inner spaces of the universe. A thought in this substance produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. A person can form things in his thought, and by impressing his thought upon formless substance, can cause the thing he thinks about to be created. Wow, what incredible read with me session. I don't know about you, but I get pumped up every single time I read this book. And that concludes the read with me session for today. In the next read with me session of The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, we're going to dive into how riches come to you, gratitude, also thinking in a certain way. We're going to tap into those three things. So I can't wait. I'm excited. Let me know if you got anything out of this in the comments. If you liked it, go ahead and give it a like if you want to, or not. Doesn't matter. I love you anyway. And I'm so excited because I know that some breakthroughs, some wisdom that you're receiving here, some truth is going to absolutely transform your way of thinking. It's going to free you, and riches are on the way to you. There is no limited supply. So we got to continue to think of the formless substance and the limitless supply, and disregard appearances and see the truth, speak the truth. All right, have a beautiful rest of your evening, your day, and we'll see you in the next Read With Me session. High five, appreciate you, love you, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.